I'm 27 years old, and my fiancé, whom I'll call L, is 26. My father, who I'll refer to as B, is 52, and my mother, R, is 50. L and I first crossed paths during her freshman year of college, both living in the same dorm building. Coincidentally, we discovered that we lived just 2 towns apart, so I often gave her a ride home during breaks. The extra 20 minutes on the road meant nothing compared to the time we spent together. Our friendship gradually turned into a romantic relationship, and since we both had close-knit families, we introduced each other to our loved ones early on. While I had met her family during those rides home, it was mostly just pleasantries and introductions at the time. Nevertheless, both our families warmly embraced our relationship, and it continued to flourish. I was a year ahead of L academically, so after I graduated, I returned home and secured a promising job with an attractive salary. Despite the geographical distance, our bond remained strong, and I frequently visited her at college. Once L completed her studies, she moved in with me since our respective jobs were located in the city near our hometowns. Like me, she received an excellent job offer with a generous pay package at her current company. After cohabiting for 3 years, I decided to propose, and we eagerly embarked on planning our wedding. Now, let's get to the part you're all here for. In hindsight, there were several red flags that I overlooked, attributing them to my father's desire to welcome L into our family. For instance, he frequently called her, and if I was around, they would claim to be discussing upcoming family events or similar topics. I recall one incident when Elle was in the shower and her phone rang. Seeing that it was my father calling, I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded both surprised and upset. I inquired about the reason for his call, and he mentioned wanting to discuss my mother's upcoming birthday, which was just a week away. Even now, typing this out, I can't help but feel foolish for not seeing through it sooner. On the fateful day when my world turned upside down, everything appeared routine. Elle had Thursdays off, and she prepared breakfast for us as usual. After I left for work, she sent me messages throughout the day, discussing everyday matters like dinner plans and household chores. I realized that I had forgotten some important paperwork needed for a 3 p.m. meeting and decided to head home for lunch to retrieve it. Unbeknownst to her, I didn't inform her of my impromptu return home. Upon arriving home, I noticed a car in our parking lot that resembled my father's. Still, I thought nothing of it, parked my car, and entered our building. As I opened the door to our apartment, I walked right into a scene straight out of a cliched movie. A scenario where a person comes home unexpectedly and catches their partner in the act of infidelity. I stood there in utter shock, a whirlwind of emotions raging within me. Rage, sorrow, disgust. If you were a fly on the wall, you would have seen me frozen in place, unable to move. It felt like an eternity before I regained my composure. Eventually, I took out my phone and began recording. I gathered all the scattered clothes strewn across the floor and hurled them into the hallway outside our apartment. With the camera rolling, I filmed my approach to the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I continued recording for about a minute before switching on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden illumination and turned their shocked gazes toward me. To my absolute astonishment, it was my father lying in bed with Elle. After the initial shock, my father noticed I was recording and began to panic, desperately searching for something to cover himself while pleading with me to stop recording. He eventually found a towel and wrapped it around his waist as he approached me. In response, I warned him that he continued toward me, he might get hurt. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. That's when I decided to act. I landed a solid punch square on his jaw, causing his head to bounce off the door before he crumpled to the floor. Elle shrieked in shock. I aimed the camera at her and said, "Concerned about your lover, but nothing to say to your fiancé." My father eventually regained consciousness, and I informed them that I had merely come to retrieve something for work and that I would be returning soon. I made it clear that if either of them was still present when I returned, I would share the video with everyone they knew. I ended the recording and addressed my father, telling him that he was dead to me and no longer my father. However, I suggested he go home and speak to my mother because I intended to have a conversation with her soon. I sat in my car for some time, lost in my thoughts, until one of my bosses from work called to inquire about my whereabouts. I assured her that I was on my way back and tried to hide my disheveled state. When I reached her office to deliver the paperwork, she noticed something was amiss and asked what was wrong. I initially brushed it off, claiming it was nothing and that I'd be fine. However, she scrutinized me and noticed some blood on my collar. She rushed to my side, visibly concerned, and pointed out the bleeding. I explained that it was my father's blood and proceeded to show her the video. She watched the footage in its entirety, her initial confusion giving way to the realization that my fiancé had cheated on me, with my father no less. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting that I take some time off. However, I declined, stating that I couldn't return to work at that moment. Instead, I mentioned having another shirt in my office and assured her that I'd be fine for the meeting. During the meeting, I put on a facade, concealing the turmoil that raged within me. I smiled and engaged with my colleagues as if nothing had happened. After the meeting, my boss approached me, still bewildered by how I managed to maintain composure. I offered no clear answers, simply stating that I didn't know, and retreated to my office. Now, I find myself alone at home for the first time in a long while. I'm at a loss for what to do next. I know I need to leave this apartment. I simply can't live here any longer. Additionally, there's the matter of getting myself checked for STDs, and I suspect I may have injured my hand during the altercation. Update. So, the day after my initial post, I tried calling my mother, but none of my calls went through. I thought about meeting her for lunch to tell her everything, even though it was going to be painful. After numerous failed attempts to reach her, I decided to drive to her house. She needed to know what had happened, no matter how difficult it was going to be. Driving there, I couldn't help but panic about how I would break the news to her. I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is involved with your fiancé. When I arrived and parked in her driveway, I took a moment to gather my thoughts and calm down. I was still in my car when my mother stormed out of the front door. I got out of my car, and she began yelling at me, accusing me of coming to her home after hitting my father during an argument with LAS. He hurled insults at me, called me an abuser, and demanded that I leave since Elle wasn't ready to forgive me, and she hoped Elle never would. Apparently, my father had taken Elle to our family home and told my mom that Elle and I had a fight, and when he tried to intervene, I had hit him. My mother continued berating me until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband is involved with my fiancé. That's why I hit him." If you can't take my word for it, I have a video. I'll send it to you, but don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally realize you're just as terrible a mother as my piece of shit father. Her face dropped, and she looked as shocked as I must have looked when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I took out my phone and sent her the video. My mom turned on her phone, opened the video, and watched it up to the point where I turned on the light. She then put her phone down, looked up at me, and I turned and went to my car. As I backed out of her driveway, I saw her in tears. My heart ached for her, but too much had been said during that argument for me to turn back and forgive her. Back at home, I started packing up everything related to Elle and my family. I boxed up all of Elle's belongings and placed them by the front door. Legally, this has been her residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease, but she avoids conflict, and she comes back. It's likely to cause a lot of problems. Anything associated with my parents, I boxed up and stored away. Despite our close family ties, I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Elle's parents to call off the engagement and informed them about her cheating. I thanked them for their kindness and support. Our relationship was still developing, but they had been good to me, and this just added to the hurt. I also asked if they could pick up all of Elle's belongings. I haven't received a response from them yet, but I hope they'll come and take her things so that Elle doesn't have a reason to return here. Update number 2. After my last post, I decided to take action. I needed to get tested, find a therapist, move to a new place, and buy a new bed. I called my doctor's office and asked for tests and a therapist referral. I had my first therapy appointment 2 weeks ago, and we decided to continue once a week. I also got tested last week, but I won't have the results for another week or so. Please cross your fingers for me. I got in touch with a friend who's a real estate agent, and he sent me a bunch of listings. I ended up choosing a refurbished cabin on the outskirts of my city, and I finished moving 2 days ago. Once I was settled in my new place, I called Elle's parents. I told them I'd moved out, and Elle still hadn't picked up her things. I warned them that the landlord would start showing the apartment soon, and had better collect her stuff before it got thrown out. It seems like that lit a fire under them, because the next day, my former landlord thanked me for clearing out the apartment. Nobody knows where I live now, except for the friend who helped me find this place, so I'm confident that neither Elle nor my parents will drop by. The only downside is that I traded a 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone has been blowing up with texts and calls from Elle, my parents, and some friends. Honestly, I have no interest in talking to anyone except my therapist. At work, I've been keeping to myself. I go in, get my work done, and leave. Occasionally, I have to put on a fake smile and pretend everything is okay when I talk to someone. My boss from my previous post has been checking in on me more, but I don't tell her much either. I just say thanks, and that I'll be okay. The truth is, I don't know if I'll be okay. I understand that time heals, but it feels different when you're dealing with multiple losses all at once. A significant part of me feels like it's gone, and there's no way to bring it back. My therapy sessions seem to be going well, although I've never done therapy before, so I don't have much to compare it to. My therapist and I get along fine, and she seems genuinely interested in helping. During the first session, we introduced ourselves and briefly discussed why I was there. The second session went deeper, and we talked about my relationship with my parents. I told her it used to be great until all of this happened. We communicated well, and I grew up in a good home, but all of that means nothing now. She asked why I cut my mother out of my life, and I explained that she said things to me that I wouldn't even say to someone I despised. There's no way to come back from that. At the end of our last session, I gave her the link to my posts here so she could read more about how I feel and what's going on in my head. It's just easier for me to type things out than to speak them. So, if you're reading this, hi Doc. For now, I'm still miserable. I thought I'd be okay by now, not necessarily happy, but at least okay. I know some of it is my fault for not communicating with my friends, but thinking about responding to them just feels exhausting. I know they'll want to get together or come to my new place, but I don't have the energy for it. Until I do, I'll focus on work, attend my appointments, and sit on my back deck, sipping on some cheap whiskey while trying to enjoy the beautiful view. I used to hunt in high school, so maybe I'll take that up again now that I can hunt from my back porch. Final update. In my previous post, I mentioned getting tested for STDs and trying to restart my life. I'm relieved to share that I'm clean. I've settled into my new place, and I must admit my description of it being a refurbished cabin was a bit generous. It was actually refurbished about 25 to 30 years ago and is a bit dated. However, with all the free time on my hands, I decided to give it a real makeover. The only things I didn't do myself were the electrical and plumbing work because I had no clue how to do them, and I didn't want to get electrocuted or deal with sewage pipes. Doing all this renovation work has been incredibly therapeutic and helped clear my head. I'm still seeing my therapist once a week, and to those who suggested it, you probably saved my life. Venting, releasing my frustrations, and receiving guidance have been more beneficial than anything else in my life, past or present. I'm still working at the same company, and I've become more open with some of my coworkers, especially those I'm closer to, as well as my boss from my previous post, all thanks to the advice from my therapist. Also, with her guidance and some of your suggestions, I've reached out to my friends and have been slowly reintegrating into the group. Now, let me give you an update on what's been happening with my family and my ex. I felt ready to have a conversation with my mother, so a little over a month ago, I unblocked her on my phone and reached out. I called her, and she answered almost instantly, sounding panicked. After reassuring her that it was me, I suggested that we meet and talk. She agreed, and a day later, we met at a diner near her house. She was already there when I arrived, and upon seeing me, she began quietly sobbing. We talked for about an hour in total, and before I left, she told me something important. She said that Elle is pregnant. Apparently, Elle showed up at my family's house and told my mom. She didn't know if the baby was mine or my father's, and Elle had been asking if I had been in touch so she could let me know. My mom hadn't informed her, so Elle left without speaking to me. Well, that's the update. I have a lot on my mind, and I'm not sure what to do or how to feel. Thank you for taking the time to read this, and I apologize for rambling on.